What's crack-a-lack, it's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so. And I'm wearing my little hat here today because I'm a little cold. I'm too cheap to turn the heat on. The weather's getting colder. And I was actually inspired by some bad performances this weekend to do this list because I just did risers last week. So for week 10 of the Scout Report, we're going to go into the fastest ballers in the upcoming 2020 NFL Draft. But if you enjoy the content, go ahead, leave a thumbs up. Much appreciated, much obliged. Helps me get discovered and become a bro, and subscribe. I'm constantly pushing out content, especially if it's about the draft, because I love me some draft. But go ahead, do that. And guess without further ado, let's go over some honorable or dishonorable mentions. I got Rico Bussey Jr., wide receiver from North Texas, man. He could have been maybe a late day 2, early day 3 prospect if he came out last year. But he stayed and he got hurt. He had a few games. But yeah, he's out for the year. He's probably unlikely to get drafted or maybe a 7th rounder. But I got him, and then Michigan edge rusher Mike Dana. Guy, he just transferred from Central Michigan. Central Michigan, and he had an incredible bull rush, but it doesn't look like he has much more than that as a pass rusher. And with his strength, it's not going to cut at the NFL level. But I got 10. So let's go ahead. Let's get into it. I'm going to start with 10, and that's Colin Johnson, wide receiver out of Texas. This guy, he was thought to be a sure first rounder in what's basically going to be an incredibly deep receiving class. Now, that's not really the case anymore. He's probably more of a late day 2 or early day 3 prospect. He's been really outshined by his teammate Duvernay, who he's likely to be drafted over him. Johnson, he has great size, he has good hands, but this year his stock's really been hurt between not being healthy and basically lack of consistency to make any contested catch this season. It's really hard to take an early pick on a guy who can't separate, especially at the NFL level. At 9, I got a feel-good story. It's Trey Smith, offensive interior from Tennessee. Now, to be frankly, he was the victim of his own hype. Scouts thought he'd be the next great tackle prospect, and that's not really the case. It was really premature for people to include him in their first-round mocks. I did it too, so I'm there with the blame. But the guy this year, he moved back to left guard, and it really saved his stock. He's shaken off some rust early in the year, but he has played very well. I think he has credibility as a day 2 talent. He's got a great story. He overcame blood clots in his lungs to come back and play. And honestly, if he were to return for another season, he could probably gain that first round status once again. At 8, I got Albert Okwuegbunam, tight end from Missouri. Now, this guy was thought to be the best tight end prospect in this draft. Now, Albert O, his stock's really been hurt, more so from the emergence of other quality tight end prospects. Now, he has ideal size, he has athleticism, but he offers nothing as a blocker. He's virtually the same product, though, that we saw from last season. He doesn't offer enough he's not that big of a red zone threat, and honestly, he has the size to win contested catches, but he just doesn't, which it's a real shame. Now, Okwuegbunam, I don't think he's done enough to really stand out among other tight ends this season, but I think a 4th round grade right now, 4th, 5th round, that sounds about right for Albert O. At 7, I got Kenny Willix, edge rusher out of Michigan State. Willix was a name people dangled in the first round, and that's not really the case. He really is a superb run defender, but those guys are typically day 3 prospects. That's when you typically see them taken. Now, if you can't really rush the passer, you won't be selecting those in day 1, day 2. Willix, he wasn't great at it last season, and he's done nothing to change that this season. I think his stock is starting to stabilize where it should be. He's about a 5th rounder to me. He's still a great prospect, just limited by his inability to constantly provide pressure. At 6, I got KJ Costello, quarterback out of Stanford. Everyone knew this guy was going to be on the list. Now, Costello, he has size, he has arm, he's a prototypical type of quarterback prospect. Everyone drools at those things, but now he was often seen as this day 1, day 2 stock, and that's plummeted since then, especially after, I mean, he started the year hurt, and then he had that disastrous performance against Central Florida. He's been better recently, but I mean, his ability to throw into tight windows has kind of really been exposed for what it actually is. It's poor decision making. He's forcing throws. He still has a pretty funky throwing motion, and right now an early day 3 prospect on my board, which sounds totally right. At 5, I got Ben Bredeson, offensive interior for Michigan. Now this might come as a surprise because he's been playing extremely well this season. Now he's really, I mean, if you go back to the Notre Dame game, he was able to neutralize that Notre Dame fearsome defensive line. And honestly, I mean, what's really been noticeable to me, and the reason why I'm not as high on him as some people are, is his physical limitations. He's not that great of an athlete. While he's done a good job of overcoming those limitations, it doesn't change the fact that they're still there. He doesn't get to the second level in run blocking, and he plays off balance way too much. He has a good mean streak. He has a ton of experience there at Michigan, but I mean, I could only really see him viable in a zone blocking scheme in the NFL, which really narrows down who will be willing to draft him, which is why I have him as a 6th round grade. At 4, I got Nate Stanley, quarterback out of Iowa. Stanley was thought to be a 1st round dark horse early after the 2019 draft. Stanley drew comparisons to Daniel Jones, but those comparisons are very few and far between right now. Now he's very protected by a stellar defense and I mean extremely safe offense, and he really can't win games on his own. He has 10 touchdowns to 5 interceptions with 60% completion percentage, so he's not been that great. He has a high ceiling, but he's done little to achieve any of that potential this year, and that's why I have him so low on my board. At 3, I got Patti Fisher, linebacker from Northwestern. I've always stated Fisher, he has limitations athletically, and he's often protected by that defensive scheme there in Northwestern. But what he did have going for him was he was a sure tackler and he was good in run defense. And this is not so much this year. It's really been he's not been great at it. If he's a liability in coverage. At least that's what we can assume based on his athleticism. And then that'll squarely put you in day 3. But his struggles in the areas where he's supposed to be great, I mean, I think that will push him considerably down draft boards. I mean, if you're built as a sure tackler and a good run defender, and you ain't doing that, then dude, I mean, honestly, 6th round, he might go undrafted. Speaking of undrafted, Grant Calicut I have here at number 2, tight end from Oklahoma. Calicut, I mean, he's a top-end athlete. He lacks a lot of size. That's why, I mean, last year he had only like 16 snaps, actual true blocking snaps there at tight end. And I mean, let's be honest though, I thought he was going to be comparable to Irv Smith Jr. coming out of Alabama last season, but that has really not come to fruition. I mean, like I said, he's never been used as an inline blocker, and he only has 5 receptions through 8 games this season. I mean, I thought this guy could have been a day 2 talent. Now it's hard to even imagine him getting drafted. I mean, you can't block, isn't a playmaker. I mean, then what are you going to be at the next level? And at number 1, this one should be no surprise, Jordan Love, quarterback out of Utah State. I mean, his stock, for me at least, has nosedived after this guy, people think he could be a 1st round talent, and I don't think so. He's had poor outings against Wake Forest, LSU, Nevada, Air Force, and those by no means that wasn't going to help his case. I mean, he just had this one. This is actually his performance this past weekend against BYU is what made me decide, hey, let's go over the fallers this week. And I mean, I know the guy, he took a big hit last season, losing a lot of his playmakers to the draft, but his regression this season, I mean, I think it basically ensues that he will return next year for his senior year. But I mean, for me, it's a lot of he's got the intangibles, he's got the tools, but he hasn't really put them to use just yet, or at least we haven't seen it. It's more style over substance at this point. That's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing. It's much appreciated, much obliged, and yeah, I got a new mock draft coming out tomorrow. Just finished up some of the graphics. I'm trying to get cleaner graphics on those mock drafts for y'all, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, till next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.